the generation before us described and defined men as being able to suck it up. I don't think our present generation or the generation after us necessarily knows how to define what being a man or being masculine is. How would you define what a modern man is?
Being strong when you need to be, but also being vulnerable when you need to be. There is a time and place. I think back to primal days as, it worked really well. We're in small communities. There's times where you can't just sit back and cry and blame, because it's life or death. And a lot of society now is wanting men to not have that. It's toxic. It's causing a lot of problems, but a lot of those problems are also stemming because men don't have the resilience, don't have the strength or the assertiveness to define and stand up for what they believe in. So I think depending on the environment, that is important to be able to, adapt to the environment within you. I was one of those blokes who grew up, didn't share my emotions, was extremely strong, was extremely angry and aggressive. And it put me in a lot of positions that I would have preferred not to have been in. However, some of those traits also afforded me plenty of opportunity, helped me to excel in sport, allowed me to have good influence in certain areas and leadership. So for me, it was like, okay, well, a lot of men now think it has to be one way or the other. Same with their drinking habits. It's like, I'm all in or all out. No. You go all in and you go all out to understand where you sort of sit in the middle. And I think that for me now is helping men redefine what it means to be a man for them, because how you see it is different to me, and that's completely okay, as long as you feel like you're making a better contribution to the world and you're happy with where you're at.
What does the process look like for you when going all into one side or all into the other, and then finding the balance in between? Or do you define balance in a different way?
I think when you look at balance, let's use time as an example. When I first started to find or establish work-life balance or balance in my relationships, etc., I looked at it as time. So we sleep for 8 hours, work for 8 hours. That means I must train for 8 hours. That's not sustainable. So that then brought me back to intent. What am I looking to get from the things that I am doing? So, and once again, this is seasons. Like at the moment, I'm afforded to have more time with my wife, which is amazing. So the season that we're in, let's say, for example, I'm getting 6 hours a day with her. So our intent's different to if we're both traveling and we're separated and we've got an hour together. What are we looking to gain from each other to make our relationship achieve our desired outcome, which is to stay married and happy and have a passionate life? So when I'm exploring new things or trying new things, I want to do it well and I want to really understand it, and going all in on something allows you to understand that and gain the knowledge and the feedback to decide whether that is going to serve you or it's not. And so through every conversation, every experience, I'm gaining feedback, and the feedback then helps me make the next decisions. For example, sauna ice bathing, when I first started that, I went hardcore in it. I was reading all the books, I was trying everything, I was running with mouth taped, like I did everything, way too much. But I then recognized what components of it did add value to my life and where they could then sit in my life moving forward. So that's how I look at balance. And once again, everyone's different, but I want to get the outcome pretty quickly and work out how it can fit into my life so that way I can continue moving forward.
The reason I ask is because I've struggled with the word balance for most, if not all of my life. And I heard something very recently that it was the balance that you want is the reason why you don't have the outcomes that you desire. And because of that, in order to get something that other people don't have, you need a disproportionate input on one side to get a disproportionate output. So the reason that you're able to say, I have X success in this field or in this vertical is because I went all in on this vertical. And it seems like, correct me, from all the things that you've done in your life, you go all in on the thing until it no longer serves you. Do you pivot based on gut feel, or do you pivot based on an internal strategy or marker?
Both. I think one thing as I'm getting older, I'm starting to trust my gut more based on all the experience that I do have now. There is also markers where it's like, okay, well, what's the cost? Because everything that we're doing, we're sacrificing something else. And I have an idea of what I think I want my life to look like, and that's driven through value. So health's the most important connection, freedom, and adventure, right? So every decision that I'm now making is it ticking those, or is it removing that from my life? And so when I think about what's going to be the next thing that I need to do, if it's pulling me away from that, ultimately, it's a big no. I've just lost my train of thought there. I was going somewhere brilliant, but it's just been taken away. But yeah, over to you.
Well, yeah, we'll bring it back around for you. Tie that into how you approach pivots in your life, because you go from professional rugby player to trainer to men's coach. What differentiates each season of your life?
Gut feeling. Yeah. So to go back to your point, it is gut. If I don't feel like it's serving me, or if it's not interesting to me, it's got to change. And I've always found myself on my feet where I've made enough money to survive at least. And ultimately the things that I'm doing now, I want to thrive, not just survive, but it's learning the skill sets and chasing that fulfillment. I've been very fortunate. My dad was a tough man, and I grew up obviously fighting to get into sporting teams and prove everyone wrong, because I wasn't a gifted athlete like a rugby player. I was more a runner. So to fight my way into teams, I always had to do extras, always had to work harder, be more aggressive, be more assertive. And it got me to that point. But then when that stopped serving me, it's like, okay, well, do I continue down this route? Because the cost of pursuing this is I'm hanging out with people that aren't the best influences on me. I am not happy with who I am as an individual. I still feel confused internally. On the outside, life's looking pretty good. But because of the confusion, I'm making a lot of bad decisions. So I got to a point where I had to pivot, because if I kept going down that road, I probably would have had 10 kids by now and been in jail. Like literally, I got arrested, which was a big pivotal point in my life. And so you either continue doing the same stuff and getting similar results, or you pivot and utilize the feedback that you've got, and also gut feeling to go, okay, well, I don't want my life to be like this. I also shouldn't have been in that position. I went to a great school, had a great family, but because the anger and the point of trying to prove myself, I just went into environments that I thought was going to deliver that.
Because searching for self-worth in that environment was where you think you were going to find it?
Validation. It was all external validation. I always wanted to be accepted, as we all do. I think it's one of the basic human needs, is we want to fit in and we want to feel accepted. And the only way I'd ever been validated was, and this is once again one of the pros or cons to being exceptional at some, and I almost feel bad saying exceptional, but I was winning national titles from 10 years old. I had coaches, scholarships from 10 years old. So the benefit of that for me was people praise you, you get a lot more support and coaching, which then obviously helps you compound in that. However, I'm just that guy. All I ever was the runner, the athlete. There was nothing else to me, or that I thought so. People didn't talk to me about anything else. There was no, oh, Lachie, you're doing well at school, or man, you're such a nice person. It's just like, when's your next race? Or well done on that, or why'd you lose? That's all I was. So to the point of that was, people think that it's amazing to be gifted from a young age and afforded opportunities, but it comes with a lot of downfall. And when that finishes, which it always does, there's a timeline for everything. You're then starting from scratch. Yes, you've developed the skills around how to become successful, work ethic, maybe you've developed a great network. But if you don't know who you are, man, you're going to blow like tumbleweed down a dirt road, and you could end up anywhere.
Because you see that with athletes too.
All the time.
Yeah, once they've achieved the thing they set out to, or when I ran the race we were talking about before, the 100-miler in December, I ran it with Steve Weatherford. And he said that he was on mission when he was playing in the NFL, going for a Super Bowl. But now that he has transitioned into the church, he says now he's on purpose. And the difference between the two for him was that one, he was pursuing something that was externally validated. The other one was an internal accomplishment for him. And the pivot between the two allowed him to show up as who he wanted to be, rather than who he thought the world thought he should be.
And I think a lot of people are technically on mission then, because from a young age, we're told we need to go to school, we need to get the good grades, we need to get a good job, buy the house, have the family, and that's it. And so many men are unfulfilled and feeling confused in who they are, because a lot of what they're doing doesn't light them up. And they're starting to question that, and they're like, maybe something's wrong with me. And then we associate who we are and what we actually think about and what we actually want to do with, there's something wrong with me. And when you then think something's wrong with you, you're focused on problems and you bring more of that into your life. And the association is what's, screwing up a lot of people, as opposed to going, yeah, awesome, strive for education, strive for setting yourself up with house or the relationships, but how you go about doing that is unique to you. Whatever lights you up, the people that you want to hang around with, the experiences, what you think about, completely fine. Then maybe the growth is learning to be comfortable with that because that's who you are. You need to shine a magnifying glass on that, accept yourself, and then allow the right people to come into your life who will accept that. And once again, as we were speaking about in the sauna, it's like being around all of you guys here is I feel valued, I feel heard because we have similar interests and talk about similar things, and it inspires me to want to be better at a faster rate, as opposed to when I'm not in this environment. I still am me and people know that, but it's not compounding because the conversations or the questions aren't there to challenge me to think differently. And I think there is something in that for men. It's why community is so important. In the men's work, I've built community because we started in men's groups, right? Men's groups for me was, I initially, once I finished football, was who am I? I didn't have a network of men who were successful in various areas. I had access to athletes, awesome, but I was an athlete. I knew how to do that. I didn't have access to men who were great family men. I didn't have access to men who were wealthy in business. So for me, I was like, okay, well, how do I get around those kinds of people? And how do I get them to share what it's actually like? Because you go on Google and say, how do I become a millionaire? Or how do I have a great marriage? And there's frameworks for everything. Awesome, do the framework. But what's going on up here? It's like I now have thoughts that haven't been spoken about. Maybe there's something wrong with me. And we go back to that whole association of there's something wrong with me. So in order to truly facilitate change, it's like the community, once again, get around people who are successful in areas that interest you, right? And you got to define your own, what success looks like for you. But once you can get around that and they can actually start saying, hey man, when I was building my relationship, my business, my wife and I didn't sleep in the same room for 8 months. Our marriage was actually growing apart. It was horrible. But we maybe discussed that, or that was something we had to go to counseling for after, but now we're in a much better place. It's like, oh, fuck, we're in a similar situation. I thought that was only me, and I thought we were about to fall apart because people don't talk about that.
Especially men.
Yeah, especially men. And so for me, it's like, okay, well, I'm going to create that group. We did that, dude. So obviously in the beginning, I was an athlete, but I didn't offer much value anywhere else. So for me to say to millionaires and whatever, come to this event, it wasn't going to happen. So once again, naturally, my association was I'm a crumb, I'm a piece of shit. But I was very lucky that I was given the 4 agreements, and I know we spoke about in the Sauna Impeccable with Your Word. I started reading this and I was like, challenged what I thought about myself, but it also made me think, okay, instead of associating with being a failure or something that those kinds of people wouldn't want to hang around with, who do I need to become to have those people hang around me? And that's when I started videoing myself on social media and reading more books and running events, and I was terrible, and started my own podcast to learn to speak better. All of this was to grow myself. And then eventually we get in lawyers, doctors, millionaires, billionaires, 17-year-old dudes who've just finished school, like all walks of life, sitting in this space, doing exactly what I'd once wanted. And I was like, wow. That all came from that shift in the pivot, back to the pivot of trying something different to achieve an outcome. We then hit a point where a lot of the energy became negative because it was obviously, we've got people here wanting to speak about the hardships that they're going through, the challenges, which once again, I think is very important, but you have to have the action items to help you move through that. Otherwise, you're just sitting in sewage, right? It's not fun. And the men's work then was like, okay, what would help these dudes do something different? I was like, workshops. I've done a few workshops now. That's sick. But what I saw from the immersive experience is when I'd follow up with people a couple of weeks later, or myself, if I'd gone to a workshop, super motivated, super inspired, 2 weeks later, back with my buddies doing the same dumb shit I was doing before. So I had potential power, but I wasn't implementing it. So I started asking myself, what can we do to help them when I'm not there? And it's just always, how do I solve the next problem for these people? Because the more we can move them away from where they once were, the less likely they're probably going to take their life. And that's what drove me. It still does drive me, but it's more to high performance. And we've just built academies and online communities and communities in person because, once again, a lot of men associate with something's wrong with them because not many people talk about having the same thoughts or the same aspirations or the same interests as they have, because we're all conforming to a general stereotype, which is, as I've spoken about. So as we've now got more leaders stepping up and sharing their influence around, dude, it's sauna and ice bath instead of going for a beer. It's like more people are, hey, how do I get involved in that? Come on, man, let me do that. Or, I had a guy who really shifted my belief was Rari Fairbarns, who started One Year No Beer, but he came on my show 3 years ago, and he was a world-class commodities trader, like one of the best. And alcohol was so ingrained in that line of work. So it's like wining and dining people, but it was ruining his marriage and nearly made him take his own life. So what he did, he went to his boss and was like, man, I'm off the beer for a year. And he's like, that's career suicide. All your clients are going to leave you. And he's like, I don't want to lose my marriage, so I'm prepared to take that. But what he did was replaced it with events. So he started doing like marathons or inviting clients to, run stadium runs or Tough Mudders or Spartan races. And he actually decreased his overheads because he wasn't wining and dining, and increased his profit. Like it was 110% or something through the roof. And he's like, maybe there's something in this. Maybe there are other men out there or people who don't just want to wine and dine all the time. That's just what's socially acceptable, and that's where the narrative of socializing is. Maybe we can start doing things that we want to do, and people are going to become attracted to that and enjoy that. And that's where I was like, sweet. And I remember literally writing a message in one of our group threads, because it was always drinking, right? And I don't get too much value from that. I was like, if you guys want to hang out with me, I'm going for a run Sunday morning. Otherwise, enjoy Saturday night. And one bloke came. And from that one bloke, Owen, it slowly just continued to build, even in my own social circle, not so much from a business front. And it's really inspired me to recognize that if you can detach from the association of being a failure, it's like, yeah, we have failures, but that doesn't define who we are. And who we are, if we shine the magnifying glass on that and continue to own that, the influence that we can have is pretty impressive. And I know I just went off on a massive tangent, but here we are.
I love it. And I love that you spoke about it through the lens of the input that I've shifted, or you've shifted in yourself, in order to not have the imposter syndrome, to create what it was that you felt was lacking in your life.
Yeah.
So you flip the script on yourself rather than saying, what can I go do? It's saying, who can I become? And then I'm going to attract people to me in order to continue to pursue a path that interests me and that serves me and that's in alignment with me, which takes someone who's a leader to be able to do that, to say, I'm not going to drink on Saturday night, so I can go on a run Sunday. If you want to come, here you go. If not, I'm comfortable in myself to be able to get to that point.
Yeah.
And I want to steer the conversation down that path. But before we do, I want to revert back real quick, because we talked about on mission and on purpose. And it sounds like you've lived both lives as well. You had an on mission piece, and then you had an on purpose piece. Walk me through the belief shift and when that happened for you. Taking a break from this episode to remind you that your inputs matter. This show was created to help you build a high-performing, healthy, wealthy life. And if you feel that you're getting value from this episode, please go ahead and share it with someone who you feel would benefit as well. Now, fun fact, over 90% of our listenership is not actually subscribed to the show, so it would mean the world to me if you went ahead and tapped that subscribe button. Thank you for being here. Now back to the show.
The belief shift was definitely after rugby, and I realized I had, I was living in France, had a house, had the car. That was my dream. I was doing that thing, but I would still go home from training and sit there, and I was so unhappy. Like, I literally left the country to try and solve the stuff that was missing, and all I did was move the problems. Had the money, had the cool stuff happening. I was like, okay, well, that's not the thing. And we spoke about it in the sauna. It's like I could be earning a lot more money, but money to me,
we just need to mic up the sauna next
time.
Yeah.
The sauna's where it's happens. But I realized yes, I want to continue earning more money, but I want to be fulfilled in the process. Like, I want to feel like I'm actually contributing to something bigger, and having people like, there's nothing more rewarding than getting a message from a wife of someone that I've worked with and say, what have you done with my husband? He's there for the kids now, or he's, on a health kick. That to me is worth so much more than getting another $1,000 or 10, like, that's nice. So when I recognize that you could actually make a career if you were just prepared to stand out a little bit, I think I was so focused on fitting in because I went to a rugby school. So I went to that school on a running scholarship, but because it was a rugby school, I got bullied for the first year because I wasn't a rugby player. I was like, I'll fucking show you guys. I'll be the best rugby player at the school. And then I shifted who I was. But there was a lesson in that, right? You can be who you need to be in the environment. But when I did that to just not be bullied, to fit in, I wasn't comfortable standing out. So when you shift from, okay, it's nice to fit in, you can fit in, but I want to stand out and I want to lead people and I want to influence people and I want to get up excited every day. I want to get up and have a sense of meaning. It shifts. You still do the same actions, but it's just the reason why you're doing that changes. And there's nothing wrong with doing, and where I would look at it is not everyone can be, but not everyone will be the individual to lead or to influence, which is completely okay. If your career serves a role where it provides you the financial means where you can have an extra week's holiday with your family, or it provides you financial means to look after your family, and that's what you want, awesome. But I've just worked with way too many men who are getting towards 50 and they're looking back on, I wish I did what you did. Or I wish I took that risk, or I wish I pursued that. And the truth is, well, it's like you could have and you still can. You just got to be prepared to stand out a little bit, and some people aren't going to like that. A lot of people are going to hope you're going to fail, but if you're committed to the outcome and you genuinely enjoy it, you won't stop until you get there.
Do you think that they do that because of comparison?
Yes, and depending on where they're currently at in their life, there's also a lot more commitment. Once again, I'm not saying you can't do it, but if you've got a family to feed or bills to pay, like mortgages or investments, generally what happens as we get older, all of that, we have a lot more dependence on us. And so it does make it more challenging to shift into something that is maybe more of a passion initially. And when you're responsible for more things or more people, it's hard to craft out the time, or we believe it's hard to craft out the time to learn the skills or to go to the networking events or to do what really it's going to take in order to put yourself in that position. I don't take for granted at all that, and I was saying to Joe before, I'm like, my wife supported me when I was not in a good place and not a very good man compared to what I believe is a good man now. But because of that, in 2014, when she kicked me out of a cab in Thailand in front of her family because of the way I was acting, I was like, I can't be this person anymore. And because of also her career, I made another decision where I was like, the life that I'm going to build for myself, I'm going to have freedom and flexibility. And I defined what that meant to me. And so every decision for the last 10 years, literally 10 years this year, I've been like, okay, well, it's got the values that I mentioned before, it's got to have that, and that. And I need to become that person. That person, the goalposts keep changing, but I'm a long way from who I used to be. And because I was 23 at the time, I didn't have a mortgage. I didn't have children. I didn't have any responsibility. So it was so easy for me at that point to do that. If I was starting now, it would be harder. It's not impossible, but it would be a lot harder. That's for sure.
You speak about having dependence on you. Mm-hmm. And as you get older, you have more and more essentially responsibilities.
Yes.
You've also talked about how being a man today is someone who's emotionally available, but then also able to buckle down and get to work. How do you view that through the lens of finding balance in a relationship? At what point do you know it's time to open up and be vulnerable? And at what point do you know it's time for me to take a step back and actually dig my heels in and get to work?
It's a very good question. I think that is situational every day. Amy and I know I was very passive in the beginning. It's like, whatever you want to do. And it's like, no woman wants to hear that. It's like, make some bloody decisions for me. I don't want to have to think. I want to feel like you're taking responsibility here. But I don't want you to do it in the point where it's like, I never get any choice. And so Amy knows everything that's good. Like, in the beginning, once again, it's like, I wanted to be the protector. I wanted to be the provider. So I never told her when I was struggling with money. I never told her when I was struggling emotionally. And then as we've got older, even let's take my relationship with my dad, for example, we'd never hugged. Like, unless I'd won a grand final or done something amazing with sport, that's when we'd hug, and it was like the elation of the moment, and that's it, and shake hands. And after my dad went through his mental health stuff, Amy's like, you got to start hugging him. I was like, can't do that. And before, I still remember the day when she's like, so I hugged him and I was like, fuck, wow, this is amazing. And Dad and my relationship has improved so much because of her and because she's encouraged me to be more vulnerable. So now I would say, if I were to give you percentages, I would say 75% of the time, like, I'm a strong, assertive leader in our relationship and I make her feel safe, protected and cared for. But I also know there's moments in time, and we generally do this before bed, where it's like, I'll just unload on how my day's been or vice versa. Or I'll be more touchy-feely than I normally would be. And I think our relationship dynamic, based on what's going on in her life, we can sort of read each other around when she needs to be strong. And I've learned that in the relationship based off communication. She didn't like me when I wouldn't open up or talk about what was going on, and I would shut down. And I still do. I'm definitely not perfect with this. She could walk in here right now and be like, fuck last week, man. And I know that's something I need to work on, because there's even stuff we were talking about in the sauna. There's so many things that I don't know about myself, or I'm still not yet ready to delve into. But I want to. Like, it's the reason why I'm so curious with psychedelics and breath work, because I feel like there's still so much pain in me, and I couldn't even explain what it is, man. Like, I literally couldn't. That's why I want to explore that, because I just know that there's a whole new level of who I can be and allowing myself to be vulnerable in a way that I know will make our relationship better. But for the most part, it's like 70% of the time, I feel like I'm doing the protector, I'm doing the provider, but she also knows that she can have incredible conversations with me. I'll tell her when I'm struggling, and she knows what I need. She'll know when I shut down. She's like, oh, Lachie's in this zone again. Here's what I'm going to do for him. I'm going to give him space, let him get back to himself. And that's taken time.
And from a relational perspective, it's almost creating a language that you both share.
Yeah. And every relationship dynamic's different. So I don't sit here and say, this is how your relationship should be. It shouldn't, because once again, there's polarity, masculine and feminine energy. And depending on the individual or who are in the couple, that's going to take stage in a different way. But I think as an individual, when you go back to knowing what you value or how you want to show up and what your needs are or your desires are, you start communicating that and you find the balance. But I think there has to be polarity. If there's no polarity, it just becomes boring. And Amy and I went through that for a while, because once again, I didn't want to offend her. As I was going from this aggressive guy, like, I used to be a fucking pig. And because I didn't know how to express myself, or I was worried about being called out on things, I would just snap. And it wasn't because I wanted to snap. It's just I didn't know how else to express myself. So when I got aggressive, people would back down, and that's the end of conversation. I win. I don't solve anything, but the conversation's done. We're not going there. And because she stood by me through all of that, it's like I slowly started opening up. And now she's like, you're kind of fucked up. I'm like, yeah, I am. But she held space for me to be able to do that. And we, even in men's work, it's like, you'll hear women all the time being like, I just want my partner to open up. Okay, well, what does that mean? Because the last time he opened up, you shut him down, or you're like, get the fuck away from me. Don't do that. And so you're not now holding space for him to be able to do that, or to be able to develop your relationship. If you look at relationships, we go through honeymoon phase, we go through the connection phase, or like conflict phase, where it's like, now the real you starting to come out, and maybe I don't like that about you. And relationships either grow together or grow apart. Most of them grow apart, or they just try to avoid that, See a lot of old marriages like that now. But then you get to the connection phase where it's like, you're fucked up. Can I surround this? Mm-hmm. Yeah, cool. We're all fucked up. Let's accept each other for who we are and continue trying to be better. And Amy and I got to that I don't know how, because it wasn't like we were intentional about it. Looking back, I'd be like, okay, this is what I'd do differently, or this is maybe some feedback I'd give to people. Read Love Languages book, read Way of the Superior Man. Great books to start there, but just communicate. And one thing that Amy and I do well from the relationship point, going back to how I've learned to be strong and vulnerable, is like, we'll have 10 minutes every night, just in bed, no technology, nothing, where it's just like, tell me about your day. Like, actually, let's just connect. You don't need hours. Like, people think you need big date weekends and stuff. They're awesome, but it's just like, if you do that consistently, because some days I'm wired, some days I'm stressed, some days I'm happy. It's like, that's life. But if you do it consistently, you start understanding your partner a lot more. You can start highlighting or piecing together what makes them tick, what makes them excited, what makes them upset. And then you can go, well, if we're in this together, we're a couple, and we're building a future together, maybe I can help you out here without you even knowing about it. That's what Amy and I do so well, is like, I genuinely am so lucky with the relationship that we have and what we've built together, because we've got an incredible relationship. We don't fight, and people go, you don't fight? I'm like, why would I abuse someone that I love? We have disagreements, but it's like, we know how to talk about it. I understand when she's down or she's pissed off, and vice versa, and we know how to work. Like, it's incredible.
Where do you learn that language from?
I would give credit to her for those first 4 years when I wasn't that better. I don't know where she's learned it from. That's probably a question for her, but I feel it's because of her tolerance with me that has allowed me to then start picking up on things that she does really well and go, okay. And then I read the 5 love languages, and she always used to give me gifts. I was like, I don't like gifts. I don't care for, like, look at me. I don't care for stuff. And then I read the 5 love languages. I was like, she likes getting gifts. I've never bought her gifts. So then I started doing that, whereas mine is words of affirmations. I like being validated. So I read that and I was like, there we go. Let's start working towards that. I can help her out in that way. That's how she feels love. I feel love in a different way, but it's a whole new language. Let's start learning that.
Putting yourself in the other person's shoes and being able to adapt their style to fit what it is that you want to accomplish in the relationship together. It's when I first started dating, and this is something that I've talked about this past week quite a bit too, especially with Ryan here as well. When I first started dating Leah, I thought I had done a lot of work, and I always viewed myself as like, I've done a lot of personal development work, and I've always worked towards being there for others and communicating well and showing up as the person that I want to be. But in this entire relationship, I've realized I've never had an adult relationship like this that I've desired. And when it showed up and stared me in the face, I freaked out and I shut down, and I've never been that person. And I was talking to a friend of mine about this, and they were like, do you ever truly work through something unless you work through it with someone else? And that was a piece that I had never heard of before, because I always assumed, like, I'm resourceful, I'll figure it out, I'll get to the root of it, and I'll be good. But I've never then moved into a relationship with a man or a woman, or like a friendship or a partnership, in the way that I've allowed someone to be there for me and me for them without judgment, rather than trying to control the outcome and say, I'll figure this out. Just stand back, let me handle this and control the situation.
What was it that allowed you to drop the guard there and have someone else help you with that?
She loved me unconditionally. Hands down. And the reason I freaked out was because the only other person to do that in my life was my mom. And when I lost my mom at 17, I felt like I lost my family. Yeah. And at the time, I told myself I would never get to a point in my life where I would be vulnerable enough with another person that they could leave me and I could be hurt like that again.
It's interesting how the trauma or the experiences, we make a decision, whether it's consciously or subconsciously, that influence so much of our life. I look at a relationship as like, it's a mirror. It's shining back on the stuff that you need to work on. So if you get upset or triggered by a partner, it's like, that's, as we were speaking about before, it's just like, that's their problem. Is it their problem, or is it your response to that? And what do you need to work through if it's important enough for you to work through it? So whether it's in the beginning, Amy wasn't as, I had a point to prove. So I was always working and Amy wasn't always working. I'm like, what are you doing, man? You're wasting your potential. You've got this going on, like sort it out. And then I, later reflected on it and realized the lesson that I was learning was I don't always need to be on. I need to learn to just be in the moment and actually enjoy what we've got. So it's like going from outcome to process. And it's hard to do, like when you've got experiences that make you think you need to be a certain way, or you've made a decision that you don't want to be abandoned again, or you aren't strong enough to cope with things without alcohol or drugs or whatever it may be. But that's ultimately that magnifying glass that is like, okay, if I want to take responsibility, if I truly want to be the husband or the partner or the friend, let's dive into this. It's going to be uncomfortable.
Is there a specific example you can give where you shifted from doing to being?
I would say, and this is really recent, probably within the last 3 years, I got to a point where obviously touring with Shepherd, I took it for granted because I've seen this show so many times. Like, who cares? I want to go do what I want to do. But then I had this moment where I was like, this is actually life. Like, I've signed up, look, this is my wife's, what lights her up, and watching her inspired and doing her thing I love it. And for so long, I took that for, 6 years, I would take that for granted. I'm like, oh man, come on. Like, I should be doing this. And then I guess there was that realization. I can't pinpoint specifically, but I was like, I need to stop taking this for granted, because there'll be a time where this no longer is, the shows or the touring. And it made me realize I do that in so much of my life. I'm always trying to get to the next thing, and I don't appreciate the journey. Whereas, been the last 3 years that I've enjoyed every single day of everything that I'm doing. There's plenty of things that I don't enjoy, but I enjoy them for what they are, whether it's teaching me resilience, grit, conflict resolution, how to be happy or how to let go with certain things. Like, every day I'm getting the opportunity to do that, and it's completely changed the whole outlook. And it's probably even to the point where Amy forced me to hug my dad. Like, that's huge. Like, to go through a whole life with your dad where you don't get to be vulnerable is fucking mental. And it's like, one of the biggest influences on my life, and it, once again, only was a realization, and sorry, going off on tangents, but was my grandfather. So we once again own a big property back home, and my experiences was I would always get up early, and I still always get up early. And I think this is the reason why I get up early, is the only time I get to spend with grandfather or dad growing up was getting up at 4 a.m. and would go out to the chook pen, and then he'd go farm all day, and I'd do whatever I'd do as a kid. Same with dad. Get up at 4 a.m., hang out with dad down while he's having his coffee, then he'd go to work all day. And we never actually spoke. And many of those relationships was you just be there. You're just like, this is awesome. Whatever you're doing is awesome. I just want to be around you. And as my granddad got older, he moved in from the farm, and we started developing an awesome relationship. Like, we actually started connecting. And I've podcasted so many episodes with him. And I've never released him, and I won't release him until Mum lets me. But I just call him, FaceTime him, and we just have such cool chats. And Mum knew I was recording them, but I would just be like, what was important to you, all these things that you wanted to know. He was 96 when he passed, 93 when he passed away. So that's a lot of life experience, right? And I started recognizing, I'm like, dude, this dude was a tough bastard. Like, he'd owned his farm since he was 14, been through the war, done all of that sort of stuff. And he's sitting here telling me the most important things of family. He wishes he spent more time on family things, not working. So I'm like, man, I feel like I should be working, but someone who's lived that life and I've always aspired to be like is now telling me differently. So for me not to listen to that, I would be ignorant. And then the same with dad. It's like dad and I have an awesome relationship. We FaceTime every second day now. We're still not to the point where we say love you all the time, but we do say it occasionally. But I just think that's and this is why I mentioned before, I feel like there's still so much pain that I can't pinpoint that I need to work through that's going to allow me to just break whatever the hell's going on there to have better relationships there.
What do you think it is with your father that prevents him from being able to say, I love you?
That prevents him from saying it?
Or is it that you don't feel comfortable saying it to him?
Both of us. I would say for him, generationally, why he's grown up, I don't know whether his dad said that to him, and then just we grew up in a tough. It's tough. You know what I mean? Like, you had to prove your point. You had to fight for everything. Like, it was. So I think our way of showing, and this is what I believe, is like his way of showing that he loved me was providing for us. That's how he expressed love. And I think I've adopted that, where it's like I express love to everyone in my life by trying to provide more for them or trying to inspire them more. But now even just thinking out loud is like, they probably don't give a shit about that. It's just like the moments that we have together, instead of saying, oh, I got to do this call, or I've got to do this, or this has to happen. They're just like, just stop, man. Just be here right now. That's the love that we want. And you can see it I can see it with Dad now. Like, he doesn't call me every day now to talk about football and stuff anymore. It's like he just calls because he wants to see what's going on and to actually probably just sit there. So, yeah, if I could pinpoint, and to be fair, probably part of it is actually just doing it to change that cycle and to just get comfortable with it. I think I'm so fearful of it and just not comfortable with it that it's just like, just do it, dude. Just like the original hug that Amy made me do. Maybe she needs to kick me up the ass to be like, wait. Maybe I need to kick myself up the ass.
Is there a fear that he wouldn't reciprocate it?
No, there not anymore. I don't know what it is, man. I think it just has. I think it is just conditioning, just not being comfortable with doing it. That part of me is probably used to trying to be that strong guy who always has it together. Don't worry about me. It's all good. And I'll work my way to prove my love.
Because I have a very similar experience with my father too.
Yep.
Where my entire life was spent up to this point. Within the past couple of years, it shifted, but up to that point where I was working to prove myself to him, not to prove myself to really anyone else but him. And I remember growing up, there were moments where he would say he loved me. And then I think, I can't remember if there was a pinpoint in time when my mom passed, if there was a wall that was put up and he closed off then. But it's even to this day, like, I'll go visit and I'll give him, like, it's very challenging for me to give him a hug. Like, I'll like open my arms and he'll be like, yeah. And, but like, we're to the point where I'll give him a hug and I'll be like, love you. Like, it's never an I love you because that's like too much.
Yeah.
It's like, I love you. And then it's like, enjoy your day kind of thing. There's never the reciprocation from it. But I make a point that every time I talk to him, to bring up something like that in order to either condition it, so like maybe we do expand into that, or B, so that I know that I did everything I could. If and when the time comes that is the last conversation that we have, I know that I showed up how I wanted to.
Yep.
But the interesting piece from the wanting to prove myself to him was when I played sports, there was always, anytime that we won, there was like this transactional accomplishment, like, good job today. And then when I went off to play juniors, it got progressively worse, meaning if I had an assist, he'd go, well, did you score? Yeah. Or if I had a goal, but did you win? And it was always, it was never enough. So whatever I did, there was always the next piece. Yep. And when I started my first company, it continued down that path to the point where every single thing that I did needed to have some type of transactional reward on the back end. Otherwise, it wasn't justified in his mind. And like when I signed up for the Tony Robbins Platinum Partnership, largest investment I've ever done for myself, the intention behind doing that wasn't to get more clients. The intention behind that was to expand into who I am, because I believe that if you create the person that you want to become, then everything else in your life starts to attract to that individual. You magnetize what it is that you want into your life. The first conversation I had with him when I signed up for that, he goes, well, you better get some more clients to be able to pay for this thing. Because I told him what the investment was. fast forward to where we're at today, like it's paid for itself 30 to 40 times over.
Yep.
But there was an interesting moment where it's like 2020, 2021. It came up in conversation how much I had made that year from basically just retreats at the time. And it was more than he had ever made in his life. And he owned a company since 1990. And think of it this way. My entire life, I'm working to prove to him and impress upon him that I'm worthy of his love, essentially. I get to this point where I surpassed his level of quote unquote monetary success. And he goes, I think you should slow down. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? My entire life, I've been trying to surpass where you're at. And now you're telling me that once I've done that, it's making you feel inferior. I need to take a step back and slow down because I'm not allowed to surpass you. Was an instant break in the chain. And it was like, oh, I don't need to ever work
that validation is not warranted.
Yeah. And I still find myself wanting to. And like there's times in my life, I think from a conditioning standpoint where I go, oh, I would love to call my dad and tell him this thing right now. But I know that if I have this conversation with him, he's going to suck it out of me.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to feel the way that I feel right now. So I internalize that and I reward or celebrate myself for those things rather than sharing them with other people. But I've caught myself having that transition into other areas of my life where rather than celebrating with an individual, like we talked about before, you do the thing, 90 seconds, you feel great, and then now you're on to the next goal, the next piece, the next thing.
So what do you think is healthy? Celebrating with people or moving on to the next thing? I
think there's seasons between both of them, and I'm curious to spin the conversation or the question back to you as well. I think that celebration is a great thing and remaining present for what it is that you're able to accomplish. And like I talked about, the depth of your breath is the depth of your experience.
Yep.
I think that there's a time to celebrate, but then ruminating on that as being the last thing that you did. Like, okay, you ran, like we talked about before, you ran 100. Oh, you're going to be the 80-year-old dude who said at 30, I ran 100 and that's it.
What'd you do for the last 70 years?
Yeah. So I don't know if there is a right or wrong. I think that celebrating with the people you did it with is a great thing. And I think that that's why team sports was something that intrigued me for so long, was because I had a community to celebrate with. I don't think going around and spouting your accomplishments indefinitely is actually very healthy. I think I personally get more fulfillment from doing the thing when doing it for myself and knowing that I did that and I walk differently because of the accomplishment. But then I also don't know, and this is something that I'm playing with myself, I don't know if always needing a next thing is actually that healthy.
Let's circle back. So I think from a celebration standpoint, I've shifted to the mindset. I used to like celebrating the achievements that, when I got my first contract, when moved overseas, or like there's a party, let's get everyone involved. Now I enjoy appreciating the small wins from I got up and did that session today, even when I didn't want to, or I read that book, or I had that tough conversation. It's like, that's building me up and it's changing how I see myself. And every day I'm becoming a better, stronger, more assertive person. And I'm proud of that. Like, I love that. When I now look at, and let's use the Super Bowl, for example, the entourage of people who think that Patrick Mahomes' success is their success is like, look, there's people in the team that made that happen, but then there's the entourage, right? And they fall into this trap of feeling like they're doing something, much like personal development. Like people who are event junkies just keep reading the books, going to the fucking events, and they don't do anything. And to me, when I think about, even when I finished the last marathon that I rode, which was a world record, and everyone's like celebrating and partying, I'm like, I appreciate you guys being here. But it's done now. Like, I'm thinking about tomorrow, I'm thinking about, let's go have dinner or do the next thing. I don't want to sit here and drink beers and celebrate it, because that's not who I am, one, as an individual. And the moment's done. Like, it was every day showing up and getting those small wins was what I'm most proud about. And I'm going to enjoy writing about it and thinking about it and having those memories. But to celebrate people and almost motivating them into doing something that they haven't actually made personal change, I don't like. Like, I'm not here to fucking fluff people up. If you're still as miserable as you were and you have a few little highs along the way, whether it's watching the Super Bowl or coming to an event, but you're still not doing anything differently and 90% of your life sucks, that's not what I'm here to do. And that probably comes back to purpose. Is I know what I'm here to do, and I want to stop men taking their life. And I believe I can do that by helping them focus on high performance and establishing or redefining what success means to them. If I can connect them with the right people, if I can influence them in the right way, and if I can empower them to take action, I'm doing that. But just running on my coattails doesn't do that. So why would I spend so much time thinking about that?
Do you think it's a shift from a macro focus to a micro focus?
Yes. I think definitely.
The biggest piece of the 100 that I did, the piece of the 100 I was proud of myself most for was the consistency leading up to it. So it was the being able to look at Strava and go, I started at 12 miles this week, and then I added 20% week 2, 20% week 3, 20% week 4.
That's some solid gains.
And then I could see this trend line going all the way up. And that was in preparation for the event.
Yes.
But I knew when the event came that I had done the work leading up to it where I was going to be able to complete it.
Yep.
And in that same line of thinking, it's kind of it really is the intention behind inputs only too, is you're often far more fulfilled in the thing leading up to the actual end goal than the end goal itself. And in recognizing that in myself, I've shifted a lot of the things that I do in my life to focus on the input rather than the outcome. Because if I am focused today on what feels right, what's in alignment with where I want to take my life, and I know that this is the thing that's going to support me, I don't need to worry about the outcome. Because A, you're not ever going to get the outcome like you perceive it to be.
Yep.
You're going to get somewhere, and if you're in alignment in the moment, in the input, the outcome's going to be better than you could imagine because you're going to get somewhere. So the outcome's irrelevant. The input piece is the primary focus. From an input perspective, what are the things that you must do daily in order to fill that piece of fulfillment?
I loved what you said there, because it is, we are what we repeatedly do, not defined by the outcome. A lot of people associate or define themselves based on the outcomes. If you want different outcomes, change what you do daily. So for me, even, for example, I aspire to have great wealth, and I know what that looks like for me. I'm also very aware that I'm not prepared to be on my 4th marriage to achieve that. So what I do daily and where I invest my time, or the inputs, as you say, every day has to be quality time with Amy and the relationships that matter most. Every day I have to look after my mind and body, and that's how I start my day, because I could wake up in the worst possible mood or be sore and achy, but as soon as I give to my body and my mind, I get a little bit of inspiration and my thoughts shift. It's like I decide how I want to feel. And then it's making sure that I do things that are moving the needle on whatever my goal is in that moment, right? Goals, as we said, seasons, it's like you and I have both done some pretty hectic challenges. We've also built businesses, we've relationships. So it's like whatever needs the most of me in that point in time is where I'm going to give the most time in that day. If I haven't seen Amy for 6 weeks because she's been in tour, it's like she deserves most of my time because we need to reconnect. Whenever Amy gets back from tour, you don't just go back to how your relationship was. It's awkward because we've both been in different routines for 6 weeks. I've got my time, I'm doing my thing. And when she comes back, it's like, dude, you're in my space. What the fuck? This is normally when I'm doing X, Y, or Z. So we've got that recalibration. But I know every single day, in order to move the needle, it's got to be the health, it's got to be the connection, and it's got to be the adventure and the movement. It's why 4 years ago, I wouldn't be sitting here doing this with you, because I would have been like, this is taking me away from work. And I wouldn't say regret, but I've missed out on so many opportunities because I prioritized work over connection. And I found myself in a very lonely place. Even when I first started my business, stopped watching sport. I didn't do a single thing. I was just cold calling literally for 12 hours a day. I got to the point where I couldn't connect with people because people had to watch the game, or did you do this, or what have you been up to? I'm like, I've just been on the phone, man. What are you, lazy? What are you watching the sport for? Watching people live their dreams when you could be building yours? And I was in this mindset, and I recognized that I needed to shift that in order to be able to, one, have a more fulfilling life and achieve the definition of success that I was moving towards. But it's in doing those things daily. It's like now I've built a really good life, one that every day I'm like, this is epic. Like, pinch yourself. This is my reality. And yeah, I'm going to strive for some specific outcomes in the future, some that are really important to me, some that are life-changing, and some that aren't. But it's what's happening right now in this moment that matters most.
How do you define success today?
It's being proud of who I am and what I'm doing. I think if I'm aligned with what I believe to be the right way to live life and striving towards what's important to me, then that's awesome. Because every day there's plenty of distractions that are pulling you in so many different directions. I believe at this point in my life, I know what's important to me, what I'm working towards. So if I can stay the course there, and look, we cop criticism, you cop the distractions, but every day that I'm moving towards that, I'm like, and this is a win and this is success.
So you've built businesses, you've had a professional career, you have now shifted a lot of that towards family and relationship. We talk about in all of these things who you have to be and who you have to become in order to make a successful endeavor into each and every one of those, particularly in business, building a brand and building an identity behind what it is that you're doing. How do you view the different skill sets that you've needed to acquire in order to actually create the life that you've desired?
I never get to talk about this. I'm glad we're talking about this. The skill sets are something often that's overlooked because people say it must be nice or you got lucky, but every stage of my development, even before I had a business, when I went from footy, I was a builder. I then was an Uber driver, Brisbane's best, and I was developing it, but then I did door-to-door sales, I did network marketing. Like, I've done a lot of different things that have developed skill sets, and at the time people are like, why are you doing that? Obviously the first point is I need to get by and make money, but then there were other skill sets that I was not necessarily aware I was learning in the moment. But now I look back and I'm like, that's where I learned that. And this is why it's so important. And it's not just important for business, but when you think about personal brand and where they fit in, it makes you a better mate, husband, work colleague, because the personal brand is obviously amplifying what you stand for, your values, and how you're showing up and influencing others ultimately. So when I then think about what skills I need to develop to continue being able to connect people that I care about with the right people, I believe hands down the most important thing, it's why we've got our business set up the way it is community. If you don't understand the importance of community, and there's all the cliche sayings, it's like you are the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time around. Yes, but there's so much more to it, right? There's layers. But then you forget that in order to achieve those outcomes and develop those skills, you can't just, I wasn't the guy that millionaires wanted to hang out with 10 years ago. Now I'm the guy that they pay to help them with certain things. And I've done that and I've helped them in many areas of their life, but I've invested in learning about fitness, nutrition, health, mindset. I've done psychology degree. I've done a lot of relationship work. I've done marketing, branding, sales, and with each of those things, you develop the ability to problem solve, you develop the ability to negotiate, you develop the ability to critically think, all things that are going to help you in your relationships, all things that are going to help you navigate life and become successful. But people, they hear sales and they go, nah, door-to-door, the car salesman, you slimy bastard. And it's like, okay, well, every day you're selling yourself. Like you guys sold me to come here today. You sold me on the ice bath. Whether you're aware of it or not, people are influencing you and selling you to do stuff, and it's either adding to your life or it's not. So when you go, okay, sales is probably something I want to learn to develop so I can get more of what I want. Let's start selling. And the best way I did was door to door. You learn scripts and you get clear on the outcome, what you're trying to shift in people, the influence that you're going to have. And that, once again, is a very transferable skill set. And who I am today is an accumulation of all of that. And I was saying to you before, Kevin, like, the reason why the Man That Can project took off so quickly in 2017 was because I was like, this is me. I'm about to transform my life. And I couldn't actually speak properly at the time. You may see me share the video of me and my fluorescent builders work, where I'm like, oh man, I'm going to travel the world one day, like mumbling. And I look back at that, I'm like, well, at least I was having a crack. And people hated me. I had Facebook pages made about me, but it was through getting comfortable in the camera. I had to learn to love the person that I was seeing in the mirror. I had to learn to communicate better. I had to learn to use social media. And now I'm in a whole different position. And developing the skills is part of that process. Every time you set a goal, it's not just the outcome you're chasing. It's like, okay, what do you need to learn, or who do you need to surround yourself with in order to do that? There will be a new skill set. There has to be. Otherwise, you'd already have the goal. And so for me, you challenged me in the sauna. Both of you gentlemen challenged me in the sauna before. It's like, I was like, I could probably, make 5 million in a year, but I don't want to sacrifice this. And you're like, really? Is that just a belief, like, that you can't do both? And now that I've thought about it in the last couple of hours, I'm like, maybe it's just a belief. Maybe it's a skill set that I haven't learned or leverage that I haven't created in order to be able to do both. And that, once again, ties it full circle back into community and why that's so important. Because when you're around people who are, I guess, vibrating at the same frequency or thinking the same way that you are, they're not just going to go, yeah, man, whatever you say is gospel, like it's the best. They're going to challenge you on stuff, but even plant seeds for you to grow at a faster rate or look at things in a different light. If you've got buddies, once again, I used to always do this, your mate would come to the pub, you'd have a beer and they'd be like, fuck my missus, she was off me for this, and you're like, yeah, stuff her, she's just an idiot. You're just validating their bad behavior there rather than going, Kevin, I understand you're a bit frustrated at the moment, but why do you think she was pissed off at you for that? Like shining that mirror back in your face to go, yeah, maybe I haven't helped around the house much. Maybe I'm not making her feel valued. Maybe me coming to the pub instead of being at home trying to resolve this is a bad problem. I'm like, exactly. So put the beer down and get the fuck home. Like, we need people in our community to help elevate us and allow us to move at a faster rate. And look, all of us here do the work, as they say, but I put my hand up all the time as I need people to pull me into line, because we can believe so easily that we're on the right path because we're showing up, we're reading books, we're going to events, that it's like nothing's wrong with me, but it's like all of us have areas to improve on. Once again, seasons of life require different seasons of us. And when you have the right people who are comfortable, they're pulling you in the direction you need to go in, then it's like, cool, I appreciate that. In the moment, maybe not. And I just speak to so many blokes, their whole business is built off that, where they've just got the wrong people validating them. So even if they do want to be better, they want to improve their marriage or they want to improve their health, and they go hang out with the same people that were saying, don't worry about going for the run on Sunday morning. Let's just go have a few beers nights, just one night. It's like, dude, you're 40 kilos overweight. Your marriage is about to fall apart. What are you doing?
Yeah. One night compounds into 1 week to a month to a quarter to a year. And by the time that you end up pulling yourself out of it, it's too late.
But it goes back to that association of self. Like your image, every time you don't do what you know you should be doing, how you view yourself radically changes. And how you view yourself matters more than anything. Because if you believe, like for example, I say to everyone, treat yourself like an athlete. Believe you're an athlete. Because if you believe you're an athlete, you're going to do what an athlete does, which is they prioritize their sleep, they prioritize recovery, they make better food choices, they exercise regularly, right? You're going to be healthier. Whether you're getting paid to do it or not is irrelevant, but it's how you believe about yourself and the image. So then do the same with finances, do the same with relationships. And then you get to start defining what that looks like, right? Putting the pieces of the puzzles together And then you do, right? You become that person. So if you're, I have zero tolerance with that stuff. Like if I'm working with someone or people in our academy and, they're still going out and doing that and they're on the brink of divorce or whatever it is, I'm like, that's got to stop. Like that right now, we don't even tolerate that. And I'm not going to be nice to you about that. I'm not going to empathize because that's complete bullshit. And I don't want to be sitting here, trying to comfort you when your wife's left you. So stop going to the fucking pub or doing the thing that you shouldn't be doing and go. And this is where we go back to, I guess, how you should show up as a strong man in a relationship. It's like face or step up to your responsibility. It's 100% your responsibility. People go, or relationships 50-50. No. Like unless it's completely, you're getting completely spoken to and treated terribly. It's like, once again, if you accept responsibility, you will leave. But if you accept full responsibility and everything, it's like, okay, well, if I'm in control of it, what would I do to improve this situation? And sometimes it means, you're always having to do the thing. Like me being here instead of back in Australia is I'm doing that thing right now. I'm sacrificing a lot, but I'm also so grateful for the support that I get to provide and everything that comes with that. And a relationship, as we've used the pendulum analogy, it's not always 50-50. It shouldn't be, I helped you this week, you need to help me that week. It's like, I might need to help you 95% of the time for the next 3 months and I only get 5% back, but it will eventually swing. If it doesn't, once again, get the fuck out of there. But I think that's an important thing.
I think the common thread here too is your ability to take action on the things that you believe in. And Naval says that everyone has an idea, but there's far too little people who actually execute on the idea. When you were starting out and recording yourself, why did you start? What is the reason that you took action and most people just sit and think about it?
I hated where my life was. I was suicidal at that point, up until that point. So there was a 9-month period from when I moved back from France and I was in a terrible relationship. Served a purpose, taught me a lot, but I was just eating pills and all of that sort of stuff. Like it was the best thing ever. And I was at a point, even, when your mum says, I need to get you to see a psych, that things aren't going well. And I just remember being like, having a lot of drugs one night and everyone's like, you probably mightn't wake up. And I was like, let's go. Like, it wasn't like I was intentionally trying to kill myself at that point, but if I didn't wake up, didn't matter. And that's not a happy person. To be thinking like that, you're not happy. And it's not that I couldn't be a happy person because I had been happy. It's just where my life was at was not good. So when you start thinking about, okay, a guy comes to me and this was literally the life-changing fucking moment. I was invited by a guy that I really respected to this event and it was on a major semi-final. So we win the major semi-final, we go to the grand final, and obviously you're playing to win grand finals. So for him as the captain as well to be missing this event, I'm like, must be of some importance to him. He must see something in it, but I also don't want to let the team down. Anyway, we spoke about, they're like, if you don't play, you're probably not going to play the grand final. And I was like, well, that would be awesome. But what he told me is like, this could change your life. I was in such a desperate position with obviously all the stuff that I'd mentioned was going on in my life and I wasn't happy. So I had nothing to lose. Went to that event and was given the book, The 4 Agreements, read that, changed my life. And I was like, okay, now I'm going to do whatever it takes. Because I did whatever it takes to play footy and it worked out well for me. So what if I could transfer that same determination and action to other areas of my life? I knew I sucked. You know what? There was a guy, Ben Kelly, who, does he live here? I don't know whether he lives in LA still, but he was a bricklayer, tried to kill himself. And he's sitting up there as a $1 million earner. And I was like, whoa, this guy is like me. And he inspired me. I'm building a good friendship with him. But I was like, I heard that all the stuff that he did was action-based. It's not like I didn't sit there and think my life into a better existence. It was like he just did things. And so in order for me to build influence, and I was like, the guys who are earning the big money are the leaders, right? They're the people who people gravitate to. I want to be a leader. I want to be $1 million earner. In order for me to do that, I need to get comfortable on the camera. So I was just like, let's start doing it. And it was as simple as that. I didn't think about it. I even listen to my podcast from 2017 and I cringe. But I also respect that. It's like, because there's a lot of people who wanted to do the thing back then, but still haven't done it because they allowed fear to hold them back. And the biggest teacher for me is like, you just don't fear stuff. I got a contract in France because of myself, not because of a management. It was like, I need to get out of my shitty situation, which was a relationship breakdown. What am I good at? I'm good at sport. Can I get paid to do it overseas? Yes. Okay, let's do that. And hopefully I was hoping the environment would change things, but it didn't. So I just put that into everything else that I've done. It's just like, just do the thing, and everything that I do now. And once again, this was a problem in our relationship, because when Amy would have a challenge, I would try to fix it. Like, very logical. And I've learned sometimes it's not about that. It's about just being, which has helped me, because sometimes I can overdo things or overcomplicate things because I'm always trying to add something to do. Whereas sometimes you just need to stop, think, let the emotion pass and move forward. But yeah, getting on camera changed my life. And I literally, everyone that I work with, I'm like, let's start doing Facebook Lives. You need to be comfortable with seeing yourself. If you want to be seen by others for the real you, get comfortable seeing yourself. And Facebook Lives or videoing yourself is so good.
I think people also put outside perspectives or quote unquote influencers on a pedestal because they see where they're at now, not opposed to where they began.
Yep.
And I heard recently someone wanted to start a podcast, and they're like, I want to be like Rogan one day. And he's comparing himself to where Rogan's at 2,000 episodes in. He goes, have you watched episode 1? He goes, no. Look, they're sitting around a table in his living room. That's them, just a couple of guys chatting. And then that consistent action and input compounds day over day, week over week, month over month, year over year. And then you get to the place where you've had now 700 something episodes.
Couple. Yeah. But it's even like having you guys here. Like, I've never done episode. I think I've done one episode out of all of those where I've had people in the room. And so even like transparency is like, I get nervous right now, which is weird, right? You'd be like, two dudes in here watching, it's like, that's comfortable. But it's also, we want to do a live podcast when we go back to Australia. So I'm like, I'm glad I'm doing this now, because I've I forgot what I was saying at the beginning. And that was because I was like, wonder if they're judging me. But once again, this is all part of the growth, and I'm not trying to be perfect with anything. It's like, I'm just grateful for the opportunity to grow. And everyone, it's, if you compare, comparison's great, right? Because it shows you what's possible. But where people get stuck is they go, okay, I need to do the podcast with everything set up before and it's like, have you done any podcast before? No, it's like, well, just start recording yourself, dude. Just start there and start developing that, or understanding that it goes brick by brick. And most people go from 0 to 100 before 1 to 2 or 0 to 1. And there's always the next step. And based on the life experiences that you've had, job opportunities, the people that you hang around, is your brick's going to be different. It's not always the same roadmap. So when I look at like frameworks for coaching people, or how people can become more confident or build better relationships, it's like, these are some frameworks, but you have to do the work to become aware of where you're at and what that next step is. No one else can do that for you. It's not possible, because I don't know what's going on up here or what your life has actually been like. You can give me a snapshot, and this is why people don't do it, because it's hard. It's like, the frameworks are easy. Give you simple frameworks, man. And it takes time. None of us have got here overnight. I wouldn't be sitting here if I hadn't have first done that video 10 years ago. Like, you probably wouldn't want to talk to me. You know what I mean? But I accepted that this is my next step, and I'm going to get criticized and fumble and all of that sort of stuff. But I've just gone, this is where I'm at, honestly. This is where I'm at financially, honestly. People, if we've spoken about it, it's like, LA is the city for it. It's like, there's people who like to show that they're doing the thing, but they're not actually doing it. And then there's people who are doing it.
You've spoken about now moving from mission to on purpose. And the purpose that you have is working and creating a community for men to no longer take their lives. And you've dealt a lot with suicide in your life, with family and friends. What do you think is the best way to combat the epidemic that is happening, where men think that they don't have an outlet to go to, or that they don't have someone who actually cares about them enough to stop them from taking their life?
Very good question. Don't think there's a one size fit all, but for me, it is getting people purpose and hope, because when you feel like you've got something bigger than yourself, and look, there's a lot of unhappy people who haven't taken their life because they've got to feed their family, or they've got to continue showing up at work. So to that point, it's awesome. But it goes back to what we've spoken about a lot. It's like, the outcome is that. It's like, I've got to keep feeding my family. So not today. But it's like when the family moves out, then I've seen that happen. A really famous football coach did that just recently back in Australia, and he was mates with a lot of my buddies. And you're like, okay, well, once the purpose disappears, the anguish is and the pain still there. It was like me in France. Purpose was I was, living my dream playing football, but I was still hurting on the inside. I was still confused, and I was still dealing with all that insecurity. So when we can shift it to going, okay, let's give you something to work towards, something bigger than yourself, because right now yourself isn't enough, but let's build yourself up in the process. So for me, it's like community. We get people from all walks of life, once again, coming into our community. Straight away, the first thing I do is like, once we've established what we want to help them gain from the program, it's like, I'm going to link you up with someone else, and we're getting you on the phone so that once again, it becomes bigger than you now. Someone who's walked a similar path or you would get along with, because now there's connection. You're going to start feeling valued. You're going to start feeling heard. And much like us in the sauna, it's like, you guys, I feel valued and heard around you guys because you understand the problems that I'm experiencing, because we're moving towards similar trajectories. And because of that, when I start talking or you start talking, I'm like, oh, I can relate to that. I'm not alone. And when you start feeling like you're not alone, you start opening up more. And then the conversation starts showing you where you can improve and how you can go about doing that. And you're not, once again, associated to being the failure like you think you are. And it's just a shift in perspective. It doesn't change anything else that you're doing. It changes maybe the conversation structure, but getting up every day to put food on the table to provide for your family, it's like, okay, it's awesome, but how else can I provide for my family? Me learning to communicate better and open up, I'm going to provide for my family in a different way. Me getting up and going to the gym, I'm going to provide for my family in a different way by looking after yourself first. And what will happen inadvertently when you start exercising, eating well, improving who you are, you're going to feel fucking better. We went from focusing on suicide prevention, and as I said at the beginning, I was hanging around a lot of people, and we were just sitting in the sewage of, poor me, this sucks, my wife just left me, blah, blah, blah. And once again, it was awesome to get that out. But if you just sit there, you're going to get disease. You sit in sewage, it's not nice, it's stinky. So how do you get out of there? Right? It's then going, okay, as we've said, let's create direction for you. Whether it's mission or purpose, it doesn't matter in the moment, because right now we just need to give you something to focus on. That's going to start changing how you act and then changing how you think. We get the small wins, right? So let's say the first goal, that a recent one is like, you've just joined our program. We don't necessarily, one dude's literally just joined. He's like, I just need to do something for myself. Awesome. Okay, I'm going to give you something to do, because you don't necessarily know what you want, but let's focus on consistently, because if I can consistently change what you're doing, you're going to start thinking of stuff. Like if you consistently do a cold plunge every day, or if you consistently go to the gym, consistently read 5 pages, you're going to start thinking for yourself again, because at the moment you're on autopilot. And that's when we can start honing in on purpose and vision and mission and all of that sort of stuff. But I don't believe it's hard to change people's state and get them back to a high functioning individual. The problem as well societally is like, what do we do? If I'm feeling sad, someone says, man, you need to see the doctor. You need to get prescribed antidepressants. They're a fucking tool, but there are plenty of other tools out there. And there are so many studies with placebos that show that exercise and sleeping well and getting sunlight are just as, if not more effective than that. And for me, once again, I've have a lot of clients on it where it's actually making them numb to the issues. And it's like, once again, that's not changing anything. You've got to change things and do things differently to create that change.
I was talking to a friend the other day, and he had spoke about how life presently felt very heavy, and how a lot of what he was doing while he's in the best position and best place in his life that he's ever been, he goes, I don't feel like I'm progressing enough, or that gravity weighs more on me now than it did in the past. And I asked him, I go, when was the last time you changed things up? Like, when was the last time you did something different?
Yep.
And other than one workout over the past 6 months, it was literally every single day to a T, the exact same thing, never ending, never changing his state, to the extent that the state change allowed him to almost rewire his biology and physiology and get him thinking in a different pattern of thought. Because it's, once you find a pattern, you then create different patterns from that originating factor and the originating pattern, and then now you're implementing off something that wasn't benefiting you in the first place.
Yep.
So it's breaking the cycle at the beginning, shifting the pattern that you're focusing on, and then expanding from there. And it's the same for business too. It's like, if 6 months go by and you're still in the same financial place you were 6 months ago, change the input, because you should be growing with almost a guaranteed process or a guaranteed trajectory. And in that path, if you're not, you're obviously doing the wrong input. You're doing the wrong thing. So in all of this, and to focus, I guess, specifically on what someone can do, consistency is the piece they need to commit to. But if someone is interested in just getting started, what would be the first piece you could recommend them begin with?
Yep. I always say fitness. Like, we've got a framework, so I'll give you the framework, but I'll share also why I think fitness is the most important. I always look at like setting an outcome-based thing. So for me, for my journey, it was making $1 million, because it's who I became in the process of chasing that shifted everything. So if we look at focusing on a goal or setting a goal, change your life because you're honing in on something. We then look at, who do I need to become to do that? I set the goal, I need to become a millionaire. Okay, who do I need to become? I was like, all these people have $1 million, probably someone like them. Okay, so I started reading more, trying to get to those events, and eventually I started getting invited to it. It's then doing the daily hard. Like, I think a lot of people aren't pushing themselves enough to do the things. It could be 100 phone calls, it could be asking someone on a date, whatever it is. Pushing yourself to deal with adversity. Then environment, you got to shake it up. If you want to think differently and consistently, you need to change where you're hanging out. And so, for example, if you live in the middle of Australia or the middle of America and you want to be a pro surfer, probably not the right environment, right? So you might need to shift locations, or you may need to shift social circles. We then look at mastery, right? So mastery never stops. So for example, 10 years ago, mastery was learning how to do business, and specifics, we don't need to go into specifics, but there were specific things, okay? And then it comes back to the goals now shifted because I've achieved something, I've grown. We go through that same cycle. Like, I've changed social circles as I've grown and developed. What I perceived as hard has grown as I've gone through that. And it's like always mastery. Hanging out with you guys today, it's like, and there's some things that I now think I need to master based off of some of the conversations that we've had to move the needle on some of the things I want. And it's just this same loop. Going back to why fitness is such a good place for people, or money, but fitness is so easy. You could do something right now. You could do 10 squats. You could go for a 30-minute run or a 30-minute walk, but you're moving the needle. What happens instantly from exercise or cold plunge? Changes state. When you change your state and realize that you're in control of your energy, everything else is possible to change, because when you feel better, you see life through a different lens, right? And when you're seeing life through a happier, optimistic lens, right, people come into your life, and they may have been there all along, but it's just how you're viewing it, right? And that's just from exercise. Rather than sitting in a chair going, I need to do 50 cold calls where you're sedentary, you're not moving, your vibration's low. It's like it becomes really hard to do that. So for me, it's why if you're not exercising, get it done. Like, you have to get that done, and you just watch the routine and the output start evolving as a result of that.
Where does someone then lead after exercise?
Mind. So if you go, I'm growing my body, you got to grow your mind. Like, super simple, because the mind is then what starts showing you what else you need to learn. Maybe I need to learn to eat better. Maybe I need to learn to communicate better. Maybe I need to do some trauma therapy. Like, there's so much stuff to do. But when you start then fueling the mind, just like you're fueling the body and moving the body, you're going to work out what's next for you, because we've all got stuff. As soon as you start reading or listening to podcasts, you go, man, I relate to that, or that hit something with me. Let's go down the rabbit hole of understanding it and seeing if there's anything that needs to be done there. So exercise for the mind, or exercise of the body, exercise for the mind. Very easy to do.
Do you think that, because to play devil's advocate for a second, is someone who doesn't, yes, they can start with exercise, and that's something that's tangible that they can grasp onto, and then they say the next step is to move into the mind. But a lot of people will combat that and say that I don't know what it is that I'm interested in, or I don't know what it is that I want to do.
You don't need to know. Why do you need to know? If you need to know, you're always going to be waiting to know. The only way you figure out what you want or what you need to do is by doing something, because when you do something, you're going to go, fuck, I didn't like that, or I loved that. And then you can go, why did I like that? Or why didn't I like that? It's the experiences. It's like I was saying to Ryan earlier, it's like all these 20 to 30-year-old dudes are like trying to be hustlers and absolutely crushing in life, and they avoid, and I did it. Like where I was saying, I stopped watching sports, I stopped doing all these things, I missed out on experiences, which then I didn't have the feedback to go, do I like that? Or is that just what Johnny said? Johnny says it's not a good idea, but I'm not fucking Johnny. So anyone who says, I don't know what I want, or maybe I don't want to do that, I'm like, I don't care. Because right now your life sucks. So if you want to change something, let's do something that is proven to help you. And I guarantee you from that, even if you go to the gym, right? Let's look at this. You go to the gym, you start working out, you might have a conversation with someone, right? People who are working on generally at the gym, or you might sit in the sauna with someone that unlocks a conversation that completely changes your life. You got that opportunity because you went to the gym. You're not going to get that by sitting at home going, wonder what I want to do. I can Google a few things. That doesn't change anything. You're not doing anything differently. You think you are. It's going back to that mental masturbation or event masturbation where it's like, I went to another event, but I'm not doing anything. You're not changing anything. You're changing like you're getting inspired and motivated, but you're not changing how you view yourself because you're going back home and not doing anything. So I will always fight back against that.
It's interesting that you say that. And I think as you explain that, that's one of the primary reasons that I felt so called to come back to LA as well.
Yep.
Was because here you're in this bubble, this like magnetized bubble in a sense, where there's so many things going on and you're doing so many things, and people are again, either doing things or they're perceived to be doing things.
Yep.
But you are in a location that allows you the opportunity to be in proximity to others who are taking action and moving. And whether you're in relation with them or not, it's the energy of the place that pulls you through and pulls you to the next place that you want to be. I've noticed within myself, and like you spoke about being here with us too, that the community and the whole reason for the move to this new house was to be able to create community on a much, much stronger level. Because while I could, where I was before, I didn't have the proximity to the people. If they were to come down, it was going to be a day trip because it was significantly out of place. I didn't have the office and the ability to bring people in and even have an in-person interview like this. I didn't have the yard to be able to host the contrast sessions. And what I really craved was something that I never had growing up, which was a revolving door where my home is your home.
Yep.
And you have the ability to, like last night, I came home from a run and there were 4 people already in the house ready for the sauna.
What's going on, man?
Yeah. Loco was, I don't know, do you live here? I don't know what's going on here. And I realized in all of that the community piece has been a missing element in a lot of my life. And it sounds like that's something for yourself too, that the community piece has been the underlying theme that has allowed you to step from lily pad to lily pad or from stone to stone, step to step in order to get to where you want to be. And then recognize that the people that you're surrounding yourself with in those moments are either propelling you forward or holding you back. When you focus on community and when you focus on the people that you surround yourself with, when do you know it's time to let someone go or to double down and bring them with you?
It would be I feel in the trajectory, like when you get to a point of self-awareness and you know what you want to create from your life, you're probably going to be talking about that quite regularly because most of the things that you do in your life are pushing that forward. For example, while we were in the sauna and ice bath, a lot of people don't do that. We do that because we know how it feels. We get the connection in there. And so the fact that I'm in there with you guys is like, well, these people are already my people. But then an example I'll share. So I had a coach a number of years ago, biggest investment I've ever done. It was awesome. I learned a lot, but then a lot of what he was encouraging me to do didn't align with me because he wasn't in a relationship, had no intention of doing it, and he didn't have many buddies. And I was like, okay, all the stuff he's telling me to do seems pretty isolating. Yeah, I could grow a pretty cool business, but he's not walking the talk in the way that I want. So there's nothing against what he was doing, but for me, it's just looking at people's lives holistically, because that's how I view my life. So, I'm not going to hang around with people who are morbidly obese. And once again, it's nothing, not having an attack on that. It's just, I know what I stand for and the standards that I have. So the people that I'm surrounding myself with, and same with, I think people should in general, the standards should match or exceed to help you grow.
How do you then approach a relationship so that it doesn't become transactional?
That's a great point. And I think even with the podcast, my podcast has been very transactional. And it was only within the last sort of 6 months that I've been like, I don't want that anymore, because it feels empty. Yeah, I'm getting great content out there and I'm learning, but I would just much rather chat to people that I would go hang out with again. So to make it more like even doing what we've done this morning, rather than just recording a podcast, it's like, hey, let's have breakfast, let's go for a gym sesh, let's have a sauna ice bath, and it's like you're just hanging. I think that's important. It doesn't feel transactional because you're not just like here for 10 minutes, get the episode done, now piss off. It's like we've spent pretty much the whole day together, which is gnarly. And so I think to make things less transactional is you've got to invest time in people. And as relationships as a whole, it's like that requires effort. Sometimes you don't want to do it, but if the relationship's worth it, you will continue. It's like daily deposits. I did a series on the podcast called Daily Deposits, where it probably comes back to why we exercise daily, read daily, do what we do daily, invest in your relationship, is because there will be a time where you need to draw from that. You might be ill. You might have a tough problem pop up in the relationship and you're drawing from the bank account. And so for me, when I look at moving from transactions, it's like I'm going to continue investing. It's like I said at the start, I was thinking about you for the last couple of weeks. It's like, that's not transactional, because I was thinking about hanging out, what we can do, dinners and everything else. It's not just like, fuck, I'm so pumped to go on your podcast and that's it.
I think in all of this, the recognition that and especially in a world that prioritizes efficiency, prioritizes optimization, and prioritizes maximization in a way as well, that learning to scale the unscalable is the best way for you to actually dive deeper rather than go wider with the people that you truly want in your life.
Very good point. Well, I just think about, of all the guests I've had, there's probably 10% that I could actually pick up the phone and speak to. Like, I've had some amazing guests, but because that was transactional for me at that period of my life, there's nothing more than that moment that we had. And so for me, it's, going back to that, it's like I want the depth. I want to know that I could just pick them up and just have a yarn to them. Like, that's important to me. Once again, it's a different season. Once earlier on in business, I wasn't focused on relationships. I was focused on trying to hit my $1 million. You know what I mean? It was a different goal. And as that season's changed, it's like, okay, well, what can I learn from the previous season? I need to build better relationships. I want greater connection. I want to be able to pick up the phone and actually just chat to people that have had a positive impact on my life. And, I've got some incredible, I look at my list of mentors now. It's like I've got like 12 guys that have been on my podcast in their 50s they're like a second dad to me. And I just call them up whenever and just see how their life's gone. And then I get one little nugget, or I can give them some value. And it's like, cool. It's like, I wish I did that earlier.
Well, Lachie, this has been an absolute pleasure having you on and being able to connect with you today, not just on the podcast, but in all that we've been able to do this morning. And very much looking forward to a couple dinners and some other time while you're in LA. To summarize and to wrap up, what input has provided the largest return for you in your life?
Probably, or actually definitely, just how I fuel my mind. I always exercise. So as I said, that was probably the first thing I would start for people, but I was never intentional with how I was fueling my mind. So as soon as I started fueling it with books and good podcasts, and even shifting the music that I listened to it's just changed everything. My outlook, it's, you know, inspired me when I needed inspiration, but it's also given me ideas and just made me back myself. I think that input is biggest.
What's your most gifted book?
4 Agreements. And it's funny, someone asked me that maybe 4 months ago, and I was like, I only give that book because that changed my life. I need to start giving books that I think would change the person where they're at. And I have been doing that, but I did also buy a lot of copies of that book because I was just like, this book will change everyone's life. But it's not always the right book for everyone, but great book.
Yeah. Well, Lachie, thank you again for your time today. I think the biggest takeaways that I have from today is really starting before you're ready and recognizing that it doesn't matter where you're at, you can always begin. And where you start from is not ever where you're going to end up, because what you do today and you consistently compound is going to steer you towards something in your life. And for you, it's I know there's been a lot of pivots and a lot of different things, but it's been fascinating I know we met something like 8 years ago now.
I know, it's nuts.
And to be able to have the friendship and relationship that we do, I greatly appreciate. And to see where you've come and where you're going is fucking exciting. So
yeah, well, right back to thanks for having me, but it's also been inspirational to watch what you've done and created. Like, there's not many people, and I say this a lot about you, but there's not many people who would literally fly to Australia for how long did you end up in Australia for? Like 24 hours?
I was there for 5 days, but but I was sick for 3 of them, and then here we got to end on the story here. So I'm flying from Bali to Brisbane after a retreat that I was leading in Bali, and I missed my flight on a Friday, so it was supposed to be a longer stay than it was. I didn't miss it. I didn't realize Australia didn't allow U.S. citizens a visa on arrival, so I didn't get allowed.
I didn't know that either, so it was good learning from both of us.
Didn't get allowed on my flight, so then the next flight out was Monday morning, so I had 2 more days in Bali, which I spent partying harder than I should have. And then Monday morning, I took a red eye to Brisbane, land in Brisbane, text you, say I'm going to be at the gym at noon, and I wake up with the flu.
Yeah.
And I'm in bed for 3 days, literally IVs delivered to the hotel room. And you're posting with like Function Well had just opened.
Yeah.
And you're posting on social, and I'm sitting there like 102-degree fever, just on my deathbed in this hotel room with like nurses coming in and out of the hotel. And then I'm better. And this is a testament to you holding a mirror up to me too. So that was Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I was in bed. Thursday morning, I text you saying I'm starting to feel better. And you go, cool, we're starting the Goggins challenge at 10 a.m. And I go, what are you talking about? I've had the flu for the past 3 days. He goes, I'll see you at 10. Literally, that was all that he said. He goes, I'll see you at 10. You sent me the location, and then I showed up at 10, and I think I was like still...
Yeah, not well.
I was still not well. But then over the next 48 hours, it was 4 miles every 4 hours for 48 hours. I basically ran the rest of it out of me. We ended at 10 a.m. on Saturday. And then at noon on Saturday, I flew to Sydney to get on a flight back to the States. But that was an incredibly short time. But that just is a testament to A, you holding someone to a higher standard, and B, putting in place the community that you have in Brisbane, but the competition and challenging others to push themselves farther than they believe they can go.
Yes.
So thank you for that.
No, yeah, it's not often that someone would fly to another country just to hang out. Like, that's very, very rare. There's yourself and my French buddy who do that. And so to make the effort for me, it's like, it's awesome. But then I look at how has he been able to do that, and all the things that you've done to this point to set yourself up. And once again, we'll wrap it up, but just keep in mind what you want your life to look like and start doing the work now, because, you know, our catchphrase is do something today to be better for tomorrow. And when you understand what you want your tomorrow to look like, it makes it easier for the inputs to move you there. But mate, it's been a pleasure.
Okay, thank you.